And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Church back once again with another one-off reading guide video. And today we're going to be talking about a self-enclosed universe by Marvel Comics, in particular Marvel Season 1. I should probably explain I'm doing this video kind of as a reaction to one of my own videos, which was last week's video, which was a one video overview of the DC Earth 1 label. And I did that last week and it was a pretty lengthy video and I went through all the different DC Earth 1 graphic novels, of which there are quite a few across 5 different lines. And where I had the physical editions, I did some Skycam shots and I showed you what those look like. And I talked them through and I've read them all and had a bit of a discussion. What's come from that is having put that up last week, a few people reached out to me and commented in various bits and pieces, just asking me about Marvel Season 1. Mainly wondering if it was the same sort of thing, mainly wondering what it was, and so on and so forth. And it occurred to me that actually it's a really good kind of parallel concept, and it would make a really good parallel video to the DC Earth 1 video that I did. Um, and so, as I often do, I went online, had a quick look for it. Very little information out there, so much props to the people that reached out to me. I am more than happy to discuss it and do a video on it this week. Now, it's going to be a short video, and there's various reasons for that, but hopefully it'll be useful. So first things first, last week I did a video on DC Earth Ones, and I did a cool little thumbnail that I'm quite proud of, and did a video, skycam shots, overviews, the whole thing, talking through the stories, talking through the provenance, the various characteristics. Um, and what DC Earth 1 is a self-contained universe retelling the various origins of 5 key parts of the DC universe: Superman, Batman, etc., etc. And it's done in a way that's designed to be accessible for new readers. Well, Marvel Season 1 is exactly the same idea. Marvel Season 1 is the idea of retelling the origins of a whole series of key and canonical Marvel characters like the Avengers, Iron Man, the Hulk, so on. And similarly, this idea came up around about the same time. So DC Earth Ones was originally announced, I think, in 2009, 2010. Marvel Season 1 was the same thing. In fact, one day I may well do a video kind of comparing all the different publishing ventures that each company does in reaction to the other company's version of those ventures. Let me know if you'd be interested in that. But here's a really clear example that DC Earth Ones was announced and it was clearly going to be popular and clearly be successful. And Marvel Season 1 was considered to be kind of an equivalent to that from Marvel. Now, I'm not going to lie and say that was the only reason that Marvel Season 1 existed. That's not the case. You have to keep in mind, back in 2010, 2011, we were only 2 or 3 years into the MCU. In fact, the term MCU wasn't even known. The original Iron Man movie, Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., the whole thing, had only come out in 2008, and we were really in kind of the early stage of the DNA of the MCU forming. So it was considered a good time by Marvel to try to entice new readers on board, get them interested, and give them a nice, clean jumping on point, unencumbered by previous continuity. Hence, Marvel Season 1. This video is going to be relatively short. I have read all of them, but I read them ages ago. I didn't really make very many notes because I was largely unimpressed by them. I do have one of them physically, and I'll show you that in the middle of this video when I get to it. But otherwise, I'm just going to run through them all in alphabetical order. One thing I will say is that Marvel Season 1 is largely forgotten and overlooked by fandom history, and the reason for that is because it's not as good as DC Earth Ones. DC Earth Ones is just nicer. It's a better story, they're better produced hardcovers. They've just kind of lasted the test of time and they've carried on being released, whereas Marvel Season 1 was very much a flash in the pan for a year or so. As a result, there's very little online information. I couldn't find a Wikipedia page on it. And that partly is because if you type in anything Marvel related, like Hulk or Iron Man or something, and then put Season 1 after it, you immediately now get sent or directed to the larger MCU cinematic or televisual universe. So you immediately start seeing stuff like She-Hulk Season 1, Loki Season 1, and so on. And I can see why that causes some confusion for the algorithm, obviously, but also for people when they hear about things like Avengers Season 1. It's very easy to think about that in terms of episodic televised content or movie related content. So I can see why a lot of people get confused that Marvel Season 1 might be related to TV shows. It's not. It's just a tagline like DC Earth 1. In fact, the only even vague source of information on it I could find was on the Marvel Fandom Wiki. I'm a fan of the Marvel Fandom Wiki. It's a mess, it's covered in adverts, the user interface is ugly and encumbered by all sorts of rubbish. But at the same time, it's not bad. It's a good place to go and check out a lot of things, and it consolidates a lot of information. Now, on that fandom, they actually don't have a page for Marvel Season 1. They actually have a page for TRN 563. Now, if you've watched my previous videos, I did a video in my Vocabulary of Comics playlist, which is also on my channel, talking through multiverses. And one of the things it mentions is that in the Marvel multiverse, the main Marvel universe is the 616 universe. All the other Marvel universes have different numbers attached to them. But if a number hasn't been officially attached to that universe, is given a TRN number. That stands for Temporary Reality Number. And so the universe designated currently as Temporary Reality Number 563 is, in theory, the Marvel Season 1 universe. Now, all Marvel Season 1 comics are meant to all be in the same universe, much in the same way that all DC Earth 1 comics are meant to be in the same universe. Um, but that hasn't been explicitly said by Marvel, which only kind of shows you that within a year or two of these things being announced and all coming out, Marvel basically forgot all about them. So that's the preamble, that's the introduction, that's the overview as the build up to what I'm going to talk about now, which is the individual comics. I'm going to go through these quite quickly because I don't have a huge amount to say about them. But hopefully, this video is of use to you and is an interesting starting point if you are interested in checking out Marvel Season 1 yourself. So, no further ado, let's dive into it. The first one, alphabetically speaking, is Ant-Man Season 1, an origin story of Ant-Man. This was written by Tom DeFalco, relatively famous comic author, and it was released in July 2012. The next one we're going to look at is Avengers. Avengers was written by Peter David. I'm a big fan of Peter David, but this story largely underwhelming, much like the Ant-Man one was. I don't like the cover for this at all. All the rest of the covers kind of share a particular style and identity and so on, but this one doesn't. And as a result, it really looks out of place. Anyway, this came out in September 2012. Very mediocre story. As I recall, this was set after the original Avengers issue 4, which is just after the Avengers kind of ossify into their more well-known starting lineup. Next up, we have Daredevil. This was written by someone called Anthony Johnston. Anthony without an H. Spell it how you want, I guess. It came out in December 2011. Like I say, I'm doing these alphabetically and not in chronological order. And I found it dull and tedious. Daredevil is one of those characters where I have read so many different spins on his origin story that if someone's going to do an origin story of Daredevil, it better be damn good. And this was not damn good. This was, like the preceding stories, mediocre. Next up, we have Doctor Strange, written by Greg Pak. Now, this came out in September 2012. The one thing that I'm going to say about this, other than the fact that I do quite like Greg Pak, some of his stories are great, some of them are a bit middling, but you know, he's not too bad. The one thing I'll say about Doctor Strange Season 1 is that actually, technically, this is in the Prime Marvel universe. In other words, this isn't in Temporary Reality number 563 universe. This is in Universe 616, the main universe. In fact, Greg Pak confirmed that in an interview. So you could argue that this genuinely is a 616 story and shouldn't be considered here, shouldn't be considered as part of Marvel Season 1. It is part of Marvel Season 1. It was branded that way and it's been ignored and overlooked ever since. But hey, that's probably the most interesting thing I can say about this story, because otherwise, this is yet another very average, tedious retelling of an origin story we all know pretty well. Next up, we have Fantastic Four, written by Roberta Aguirre Sacasa. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly. This came out in October 2011. Oh my God, another origin retelling of Fantastic Four. It was fine. There was nothing wrong with it. It was dull, as I recall. One thing I do remember about reading it, having read it a couple of years ago, is I remember just thinking, there will never be a Fantastic Four origin story as good as the one in the 1996 Heroes Reborn universe. I know, bold words, but I stand by it. Next up, we have Hulk, written by Fred Van Lente. I've read a fair bit of Fred Van Lente, mainly in his Valiant comics, and he's pretty good. As I recall, this Hulk story was pretty mediocre. Maybe I should go back and reread it, actually, because this may well have been the very first Fred Van Lente I ever read. Anyway, that came out in August 2012. As for the next one, The next one's Iron Man, which I own physically. In fact, let's have a look at that in the real world.
And here we are, IRL, as they say. So, the only season 1 graphic novel that I own is this one, which is Iron Man by Howard Chaykin. So, given this is the only one that I own, I might as well take this opportunity to show you what they actually look like. So, this is a standard size hardcover, so the same size as a trade paperback. This is the general formatting, apart from the Avengers one, which looked so out of sync with all the others that I didn't even include it on the thumbnail. But otherwise, they all look like this. I don't know if you can tell or hear. It has a really nice, soft, kind of matte finish, like a brushed matte finish. You probably haven't seen these, but you may well have seen the Injustice hardcovers by DC, written by Tom Taylor. They have a very similar kind of brushed, kind of soft cover. No dust jacket. And the back will look like this. It has a picture, it says season 1, and then it has a blurb. All the season 1 graphic novels have that same format, although obviously they have different pictures and different blurbs and different colour schemes. The spines all look like this. All the spines definitely follow the same pattern. I think they all line up perfectly. They should do. If they don't, that's just another design horror show from a comic publisher. But this is how they look. So say the name and then season 1 and then the creators. Like I say, this is the back and this is the front. And they all have this very nice stylized kind of format, other than the Avengers one for some reason. It does say digital edition on mine. I don't know what that means. I think there's like a QR code you can scan or something, but I never did. And the end leaves are plain. In this case, is yellow, so kind of thematically keeping with that. And again, that's the same with the other ones. The other ones I have read either digitally or physically. And as I recall, the physical ones at least were exactly like this. So why did I actually keep this one in my collection, or actually buy this one particularly? The truth is, this was a really good story, and the best endorsement I can give for good story is to physically own it. As you hopefully know by now from my channel, I try not to physically own much stuff. I obviously have a huge library and loads of comics, but I have read possibly 8 or 10 times more comics than I actually own. So I only really keep the cream of the crop. And this one, I read it and I was like, yeah, this is brilliant. I'm going to keep it. Ironically, I don't remember a huge amount about it, other than it was a really interesting modernization of the story and involved terrorists in the Middle East, rather than the East Asian, Vietnam or Korea or whatever the concept was for the original retelling or the original story. Also, the artwork is fantastic, really well done. The writing is good, the story is good, and I just remember just being impressed with it. I mean, maybe I was overly impressed because I was reading the other season ones at the time and they were a bit of a letdown. But given that I've read the Marvel season 1 origin stories so many times, I've read maybe 20 Daredevil origin stories, maybe 100 Spider-Man origin stories. I've read at least a dozen Iron Man origin stories over the time, and it's been told and retold and told and retold so many times. So the fact that I found this interesting, and not only interesting, I found it really fun and enjoyable and a worthwhile read, it says something. Yeah, so like I say, I can't actually remember a huge amount about it, which is fine because I'm not planning on giving spoilers. I never do. But yeah, that's basically. The fuck is this? Right, here we are. If anyone wants to try redeeming that code, go ahead. It's a free digital copy using that code. And that's available on the Marvel Comics app for iOS and Android. This is about 12 years old, so chances are it doesn't actually work. But hey. Anyway, sorry, what was I saying? A great story. Good artwork. It's a rare origin retelling, which I thought was actually fun. And recommended. I mean, long story short, this passes the Jerry test. If someone was in my library and they were like, hey, I've got half an hour to kill, should I pick this up? I'd go, yeah, it's a great Iron Man retelling. This is what season 1 should have been. Shame about the other 10. Anyway, on that note, let's go back to the normal video.
Okay, and now we're back to the ones that I didn't buy. So the next one is Spider-Man, written by Cullen Bunn, most famous from The Sixth Gun originally, I guess. That came out in May 2012. Oh my god, yet another retelling of Spider-Man's origin story. Please, God, just kill me now. Next up, we have Thor, written by Lila Sturgis. I've never heard of Lila Sturgis before, and apparently it's credited under a different name on the actual cover of the graphic itself. I don't really know the story behind that, but it sounds probably a bit unflattering towards Marvel. Anyway, this is a Thor origin story released in October 2013, making it one of the very latest ones to be released, and another Thor origin. I'm not even a Thor fan anyway, so as you can imagine, I was less than enamored with this. Next up is Wolverine, written by Ben Acker and Ben Blacker. Wolverine, of course, being Marvel's version of Batman. Everyone loves Wolverine, everyone buys Wolverine. Wolverine is just clickbait. In that sense, I was pretty stunned to realize this actually came out at the end of all of them, pretty much. This came out in June 2013, so one of the latest Marvel season graphics to release. In fact, it may well have been the last one of all of them. Another Wolverine, I mean, we've seen Wolverine's origin. That was unimpressive anyway, even though it was written by Paul Jenkins back in the day. So I don't really know what this was going to add to that narrative. It's okay, check it out if you want. I did not keep it. And finally, alphabetically speaking, last but definitely not least, we have X-Men, written by Dennis Howlam. I have no idea who that is, and I've never seen any of their work before. This was released in March 2012 and was another X-Men, gathering the X-Men kind of retelling type thing. I wasn't interested. Again, I'm a big X-Men fan, but how often can you tell the same story? Okay, well, with that out of the way, that's all of them. That's all 11 Marvel Season 1s. Very short-lived, very much a flash in the pan, very low in terms of their profile and in terms of their sales success. And I think that's kind of deserved. These kind of tedious origin retellings, unless you add something new to it, like DC did with the Earth ones, where they added real powerhouse creators and they went down a very particular kind of route with them, these just didn't do anything for me. They really didn't. But if you are interested, they exist. There's 11 of them. They're reprinted reasonably well. They're in stock, not really hard to find. If you are interested in a particular character, pick them up. Hope you enjoyed. Anyway, I hope this clears up any confusion about this particular small Marvel imprint. Let me know what you think. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.